Diplomacy has failed, and wars returning to the Middle East. As negotiations collapse, the region faces a renewed and devastating era of violent conflict. The US rejected a new peace proposal, making it unclear if this fragile ceasefire can actually survive. This move leaves the Middle East in a state of deep uncertainty. Negotiations collapse, stripping away the only barrier against a regional war. Now, we face the very real possibility of renewed combat across the border. To see why the threat of conflict is so palpable, look at the current stalemate. With a renewed conflict between Iran and the United States considered likely, the possibility of the resumption of war looms overhead. The possibility of renewed conflict looms as President Trump has rejected an Iranian proposal to reopen the Strait of Hormuz, while threatening a massive response if Tehran refuses to agree not to develop a nuclear weapon. The region has been quiet for weeks since the United States and Israel stopped their recent bombing campaigns against Iranian targets, leaving a tense, uneasy stillness across the Middle East. Many analysts thought this quiet period was just a temporary lull, not a real end to the ongoing fighting, believing the underlying tensions remained unresolved. This ceasefire wasn't about peace. It was a frantic move to find a diplomatic way out before the fighting turned into a massive regional war. The pause in kinetic operations aimed to open a window for back-channel talks to reach a lasting agreement, preventing the massive costs of a wider war. The ongoing war has caused the biggest disruption ever to global energy supplies. This instability follows a period where Iran blocked nearly all shipping from the Gulf. Energy markets reacted to the uncertainty, causing consumer costs to rise and commodity prices to swing wildly across the global sector, creating significant volatility for international trade. The escalating tension centers on the nuclear program. Trump has expressed dissatisfaction with the latest Iranian proposal, which would open shipping in the Strait of Hormuz and end the USS blockade, but he is reviewing the offer. When the Strait of Hormuz blockade tightened, global oil trade turned into a site for direct geopolitical confrontation. This tension threatened every major energy market. Blocking this waterway strained global supply chains, turning a local dispute into a worldwide economic crisis that hit shipping costs and trade routes hard. The White House closed the window for negotiations, effectively ending the diplomatic efforts to prevent escalation. Now, we face a real possibility of high-intensity warfare returning to the region. As rejecting the recent proposal ends the de-escalation period, now, the USS is clearly preparing to return to an active military posture instead of relying on diplomacy. Things boiled over in late April after the Trump administration rejected an Iranian proposal meant to end the maritime blockade. This diplomatic failure effectively halted negotiations and escalated regional tensions. Tehran's proposal failed because the other side flatly refused to work within the specific framework the regime had proposed. Iran's proposal used a three-stage process. Officials said this would ease global market pressure immediately while pushing the hardest negotiations into the future. Iran planned to stage negotiations to gain leverage. They wanted immediate economic relief first, then would demand nuclear concessions once their bargaining power grew through these early wins. This Iranian proposal demanded the immediate reopening of shipping lanes in the Strait of Hormuz and the end of the USS naval blockade on Iranian vessels. The deal used the global oil shortage to pressure the US into concessions, specifically targeting the economic strain caused by the blockade to force their hand and compel a diplomatic retreat. To secure this critical maritime relief, Iran suggested delaying the most difficult nuclear negotiations until a later date. However, Trump remained dissatisfied with this proposal, preferring more immediate concessions. Trump expressed that the proposal could cost the US leverage, as the stalemate drags on and the possibility of renewed war looms. Tehran planned to lift economic sanctions and end the blockade first. They intended to use that new financial stability to push for nuclear curbs later. The proposal would open shipping in the Strait of Hormuz and end the US blockade, leaving nuclear talks for later. President Donald Trump rejected the attempt to separate maritime security from nuclear concerns, insisting that both issues remain inextricably linked. The administration saw Tehran's attempt to decouple these issues as a way to dodge the specific sanctions meant to ensure their nuclear compliance. Trump told senior national security officials he hated the proposal. He feared losing the United States' primary leverage in these negotiations, potentially weakening the nation's position. The president won't separate these issues, likely because he thinks the maritime blockade is the only way left to force Iran to cooperate. Trump feared that lifting the blockade and sanctions would give Iran exactly what it wants to pursue, nuclear weapons without any oversight or monitoring. He believed this lack of scrutiny would allow for unchecked weapons development. Trump has repeatedly stated that Iran can never have a nuclear weapon and has threatened a massive response if the Islamic Republic refuses to agree not to develop one. He stated clearly that the US naval blockade remains in place and will stay until Tehran officially signs a verifiable nuclear deal. This hardline stance effectively kills the Iranian three-stage plan. The US now ties essential maritime relief directly to the final, hardest stage of nuclear verification. The rejection immediately unsettled the Iranian military command. Iranian officials warned of a return to kinetic war after Trump rejected the proposal to end the blockade. A senior Iranian military figure stated that a renewed conflict is likely. But